Good evening, everybody. How we doing? How we doing? Just to make you guys aware, on the live chat. Good evening to everybody joining us, and yeah, just so you know, for some strange reason, I don't know why, I can see nothing on the chat. So I apologize now, hoping that as time goes on, that we can get the kind of chat. The chat will come up and running. But for some, I've got absolutely no idea why the chat's not working in a minute. But anyway. Welcome on, guys, to Paranormal Monkey Podcast, and so pleased to have our guest this evening, Mr. Barry Conrad. Now, Barry is obviously intimately linked with a haunting called the San Pedro haunting of 1989, and hugely famous, hugely well known, particularly the photographs and the imagery and the documentary that followed it. So without further ado, let's bring in Barry. Hey, Barry, how are we doing?
Good, Joshua. I'm glad to be here. It really is exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So, like I said, I'm hoping that as time goes on, for whatever reason, the function of the chat function, I don't know what's going on with this software, but I'm hoping it'll kick into being in a second. So, for those that are watching right now and have never heard of Barry Conrad and don't know what you're about and don't know anything about you at all, do you want to say just a little bit about yourself? In terms of your career and how you came to be linked to this haunting.
Right. Yeah. Oh, gosh. I go way back. So actually, I'm originally from Ohio, back in the Midwest, and I grew up a little farming community near Cincinnati, really. And that's where I started my TV career. I started doing news back there. And I eventually moved to Denver. I worked there for a little while. And then I came out here in '86 to Los Angeles. And I wanted to pursue more production types of things and kind of get out of the news cycle a little bit. And that's kind of how I started. But I met a gentleman who was a friend of a lady I'd met named Dr. Barry Taff. And Dr. Barry Taff was known for a movie called The Entity, which was based on a real case that he had investigated in '74. It was about a woman who was attacked and raped by an entity in Culver City, California, right near the studios of MGM and so forth. So that's how I got into this business of the paranormal. I've always been interested in it as a kid. I mean, I read a lot of comic books, and you read stories. But my mother I remember playing with a Ouija board with her friends back in this farmhouse where I grew up in Fairfield, Ohio. And I remember one night there was a lot of hubbub about something exciting that was going on that the board was communicating. And that was stuck in the back of my mind because they weren't the type to make up anything. So that's I always had kind of an interest in that stuff, and I always believed that there was something bigger than ourselves out there. You know, it's being really egotistical to think and arrogant to think that we're the only thing out there. So that's how I got started. But Barry Taff, I told him, look, I'm a camera guy. I said I can do camera pretty well, and I said I would like to find evidence to get some empirical evidence on camera of ghosts. I thought it's one thing to tell a ghost story.
Yeah.
But another thing, you know, like when you don't have the evidence. So I said, I don't want it to be the fish that got away kind of thing. I'd like to get it on camera. And that's what really was my impetus. And I told him, Dr. Tafford, I told him, I said, look, if you have a good case, let me know. And we went out on a number of things, and usually nothing ever happened. But this one night in 1989, in the summer, all hell broke loose in San Pedro.
We'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that.
Yes.
Right. So the San Pedro haunting, there's a lot to unpick, you know, because this was not a kind of a short burst kind of case. It wasn't like a couple of week kind of poltergeist case. It was a number of years. It's a haunting, I would say, rather than a poltergeist case, because there was apparitions seen and things like that. So I'm going to take it right back before your involvement. So I think Disbeliever started in winter of '88, essentially when Jackie Hernandez was having domestic issues with her husband. I don't know the extent of those domestic issues, but things were pretty rough for her, and she had to leave, and she had a young son, I believe, at the time, was pregnant as well, and basically had to leave and found this place. So do you want to pick it up from there, essentially, from because that's what she experienced first off, you know, before you were involved and before you kind of visited her. That's
right. That's correct, Josh. She had reported, well, actually, her girlfriend, Susan Castaneda, who has since passed on, they were neighbors, and she had witnessed like a lamp fly off a table and different things. And she had seen Dr. Taff, probably on NI. We were on some show about the Queen Mary, the ship docked in Long Beach. It was supposed to be on. I never saw anything, but we did pick up some things on camera. Other people had picked up some things on camera. And she'd seen him on this show. And so she called Dr. Taff. And of course, he called me, and I would go out almost on every case with him at that time. And he got a call about this very frightened woman named Jackie Hernandez in San Pedro. And like you said, she had a little boy, 3, and she was pregnant with her daughter, who would be her daughter that year. And she did give birth shortly after 1988. And her name was Samantha. And so, but she was really scared. She had just broke up with her husband, like you said. They had some domestic difficulties. And oh my gosh, I mean, I went in there on August 8th, 89, because Taft set up an appointment to meet her, and he asked me if I wanted to go. I said, absolutely. And I had a guy working with me named Jeff Wheatcraft. And that's kind of important because Jeff and I had met each other. Actually, we were working on a short movie over on the Disney lot. It was called Platinum Blonde. I don't know if it was ever released, but it was a short film that was being produced. And he was in the art department. I was in the art department. He was doing some behind the scenes photography. And I asked him if he wanted to go. I think he had an interest in stuff like that, but not really believing. He was a total skeptic going into it.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst that night, August 8th, 89. Never forget that night. It was a hot night, sultry night.
Before you arrived, and before obviously, like you say, Jackie's friend essentially going to watch the TV show, saw that I think it was like an old episode where you went to the Queen Mary or something like that, and kind of thought these are the guys to help you, basically. So what exactly had she experienced before you got there? You know, in her home, was there anything particularly major before you guys arrived, or was it? Because it was enough to scare her, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a couple of things that were going on. There was this kind of typical poltergeist type of phenomenon, objects kind of moving, and there was a a painting of a goose or something that flew off the wall, and it landed, actually just landed below on a table, but it landed straight up, like propped against the kitchen wall there. And the nails had been removed or something from the wall, and they were laying, vertically up
Yeah.
in an upright position. And the other thing, I think, well, Susan, like I said, Susan Castaneda, her friend, had witnessed a lamp fly off a table while it was still on. It just pulled right out of the wall and shot across the room. But the thing that was really frightening, other than the fact that she did say she heard noises in her attic, she said she heard footsteps coming from her attic, was she would wake up. She woke up one morning, early morning, it was still dark, and she had a little day bed that she slept in right off with the kitchen, where the kitchen is. It was in the living room, but it's right off where the kitchen. It was a very small house. She would see an old, desiccated looking man, corpse-like. He was sitting with his hands, close together like this, together. And he was sitting at the little kitchen table, and he was staring at her. And he was real gaunt, there's no color, very pale looking. She began seeing that apparition. It did disappear, but it stayed visible to her for quite a while. And later on, she started seeing it sitting on the lower bunk bed in the children's bedroom, cross-legged, with wearing, like the old gasoline style pants, and they would wear, the attendants would wear, and or I think it was a red flannel shirt, and he looked corpse-like. And he, again, didn't say a word. And that's what the thing that got me was she seemed very credible when she told the story. I don't know if the other people seen it, but she had seen it.
So this apparition had been seen multiple times. It wasn't just a one-off thing, because I'd heard about the thing about this apparition being seen at the foot of the bed, but you say she'd seen it at the kitchen, at the table, and she'd seen it quite a few times.
Yeah, mainly on that bunk, sitting on that bunk bed, and then it would stay there for a little while, maybe up to a minute. Unlike the one at the kitchen table, that one stayed for an hour or so, which is really unusual for an apparition to materialize
just a bit.
that long, And she was scared to death. I mean, we could tell when we got over to the house, there was a lady named Chrissy Zivkovic who had also witnessed things in the house, poltergeist types of things. Susan was there, and then Barry Taff had brought a couple of friends. I think one of his ex-girlfriends was there at the time, and I was there with Jeff. So it was an interesting night because we, again, what I was going to say, she's telling us these stories, and Jeff whispered into my ear, I'll never forget, he goes, "It'll be a cool day in hell before I believe any of this stuff." And so she talked about also seeing a disembodied head in her attic. She had stood up on top of the washing machine with a milk crate to look in, because someone had told her about finding money in her attic. And so she said, "Well, maybe there's some money in my attic. I don't know," because, long after she moved in. So she got up there and she opened up that little crawl space door, like wooden door. And she said she had seen a disembodied head, which looked different than the old man. It looked like it had jowls, I think of Alfred Hitchcock, that kind of look.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Floating towards her with wide open eyes, and she jumped down real quick, was scared to death. But then she didn't hear anything after that. So, but that was the thing that I thought, well, wait a minute. When she told us that story, I asked Jeff, I hadn't brought video camera equipment in yet. It was in my truck. I said, "Well, Jeff, I know you're skeptical, but do you think maybe you could just go up, take a couple photographs in the attic, and then we'll leave?" Because I hadn't brought any video equipment in, because there's so many times you go out, nothing ever happens,
I was going to say, in terms of your kind of first, feelings of entering the house for the first time. I mean, you're kind of a TV guy, essentially a TV show guy, a cinematographer, videographer. Jeff's a photographer, so you're not, professionally, you're not, in terms of investigating the paranormal, it's not really your thing other than recording, essentially, for a TV show. How did you feel going into that? Did you feel completely out of your depth? Were you like, what the hell is going on? Or were you very skeptical generally of the whole situation?
Well, I remember I was very moved by their stories, because Jackie seemed very credible. And you could tell just by her expression that something was going on there. Then when the other girls started talking about, they would hear footsteps coming across the attic, and then they would stop and different things. And then again, I think there was a pencil holder that went flying off of a shelf or something. I was convinced that something was going on here, but did I think anything would happen while we were there? Or I thought, well, maybe this is just a, one-off chance to get anything on camera. So I hadn't brought it in yet. That's why I asked Jeff to go up before we left. I said, why don't you go up, take a few pictures? He had his Canon 35 millimeter camera. He's a pretty good photographer. So I thought, well, maybe he can get something. So again, he was very skeptical. Against, I'll do it. And again, I didn't think anything was going to happen.
Was Jeff kind of skeptical of the story, or was he kind of skeptical of Jackie as a person or her accounts and things?
I think he was skeptical of all ghost stories. He just thought them as being fictional stories. And then I was telling him, like, in England, where you're from, well, this is a worldwide phenomenon. Ghosts, especially in England, that English culture is much older than our culture in America. And I said, there's got to be something to it. How could all these be? How could all these stories be fictional? There's got to be some grain of truth to it,
Yeah.
But he didn't think. No, when he went up, he did go up into the attic. Did he think anything would happen? No, not at all. He was skeptical about the whole thing. The whole thing.
Obviously, the San Pedro haunting is kind of infamous, I suppose, for the photos of Jeff in the attic. But before those photographs, which we'll come on to, what was also interesting is that, like you mentioned, obviously there were noises and things like that coming from the attic. So that seemed to be kind of a focal point of the house, essentially, where a lot of these noises, whispering noises, bumping noises, all kinds of things, plus the disembodied head, which Jackie had seen inside the attic. And the incident that I want to refer to first is the bit when Jeff went into the attic to take some photographs. And he took, I think it was a couple of photographs before he felt his camera being wrenched out of his hand. Is that right?
Yes. He went up into the attic and he took a couple of pictures. And the first inkling, clue that I had that something was awry was that he came down. I remember. Now, he went up first, took a few pictures, nothing happened. He came back down, and we were in this little laundry room right below the crawl space where you go up into this attic. And he says, well, nothing happened. But he says, I do feel like I'm being watched. But he says, I think these stories are starting to get to me, Yeah. Maybe that's psychological or so, And so one of our group, a friend of ours named Larry Brooks, I think was a friend of Taft, said, hey, why don't you go back up and take a few pictures over your shoulder? Yeah. Maybe because he said, oh, I felt like there was something behind me. Well, maybe the idea was maybe you'll get a picture over your shoulder if there's something there. So he kind of chuckled at that, but he gave in to that idea, and he said, okay, I'm sure it's just the stories I'm hearing, and this is what's getting me a little creeped out. But he did go back up. That when he went back up into the attic the second time, that was the real true catalyst of this adventure, because I'll never forget, he was taking some pictures, and then what he told us was, he said he was taking pictures, and actually, let me back up, because he's taking pictures over his shoulder, like Larry had mentioned, but then suddenly we hear a jolt, like a movement, quick movement.
Yeah.
And then he comes bolting down from the attic, totally panic-stricken. His palms are sweating. He's like, my camera, what happened to my camera? And I said, I don't know what happened to your camera. He goes, I was taking the third shot, the third frame, like Larry wanted him to do, over the shoulder. As I was squeezing off the third frame, suddenly the camera just pulled out of his hands. It was quick like that. And then he said, I got to get that camera back. I don't blame him. I know, if you're a photographer, your equipment's very special.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I mean, particularly, I get that, because I use I've used done digital photography in terms of not just your camera body, but your lenses, which are even more expensive. Exactly. So I fully get he wants to get his stuff back.
Yeah, he wanted his camera back, and I said, well, wait a minute, let me go get my video equipment while you do that. And I went out to get the video equipment, and when I got back. Came back in the house, I went to get back then we had these real cumbersome mine was an Ikigami 738. I never forget the camera, big, and you have a deck hooked up to it. Before we had all these smaller cameras and we went digital, So it's got 3/4 inch video, very cumbersome. And so I went out. One time I got back, he'd already gone in the attic. He's standing down there and he's got his camera. And so he said, I found the body of my camera separated from the lens. Now the lens is one of those bayonet mount, lenses where it's a bayonet mount camera where you just attach the lens to the mount and you just lock it in. And the lens, he found the lens lying port side up, just behind the trap door of the attic where you go up. But the other weird thing was that the camera body was lying all the way over, maybe 20 feet over, 15 feet across on the other side in a line.
I'm just going to show, whilst you're talking, I'm just going to show people at home a couple of images of the attic itself.
Sure.
So
that's it.
This there we go. So come on, hopefully eventually. So you can kind of see the boards on the floor are kind of a little bit disheveled. It's pretty. I mean, it doesn't look great in terms of for walking on, but it also gives you an idea of the size of the attic as well.
Josh, too, and it's even bigger on the left, to the left of that, where that shadow is there, where the board is on one of the struts. It's bigger than that. You can actually, in the center of that attic, you can walk upright in that attic. It's a pretty big attic, covers up the whole roof, covers the whole roof area.
Yeah.
And that little crate that you see, it's like a wooden crate. You can see it all the way across.
Yeah.
That's where he found the body of the camera, in that little crate.
And, in that crate. Okay.
In the crate. I think it was lying face down. And then he found the lens. I'm not sure if he found the lens first. Maybe he found the lens first, but it was lying upright, port side up, right behind where he was taking pictures. He hadn't even been all the way into the attic. He hadn't been all the way over there. He didn't go over there till the second time he went up. And that's when he found the camera body in that crate.
Like I said, we've got a couple of other images which I'll show as we're chatting along. But obviously, with Barry Taff was with you, the parapsychologist. For those that don't realize, I mean, how and obviously you're going in there and you essentially to document. So whether that's Jeff taking photographs, you taking video, how much were you guided by Barry Taff, and how much was kind of down to you in terms of in deciding what to do and the plan of attack, essentially, with how you kind of cover this?
Well, I think Barry was Dr. Taff was very amazed by what was going on, especially after the camera incident happened. And I just put the camera on my shoulder and I said, look, I just kind of took matters in my own hands. I wanted to document. So maybe this is the opportunity to get something on camera. And so I went up, he went up first, and then he had to help me because there was a deck, and I brought the deck up. I had the camera rolling as I went up. I thought maybe I'll catch something when I go up. And so I'm going up into the attic, and the first thing I noticed is that the camera stopped. The deck and the camera stopped. It was some kind of it was neutralized, basically. And those are freshly charged batteries. So that was kind of weird.
So you're obviously, you're no amateur. You're a professional videographer for TV shows and films and movies, and you've been doing this a long time. Have you ever had that experience where you've gone up to a particular place, you've lost your video footage, and then when you come out of it, it works again? Was this just not an interference thing? Were you able to kind of pin down what was going on with your equipment?
Yeah, I never had that happen with that gear. And the weird thing is that the batteries are two separate batteries. And I always charge my batteries. You always keep them charged. You never know when you have a job you need to go out on. And what was weird is the battery was separate in the deck from the camera battery. It was one of these Anton Bauer batteries. They're pretty heavy, but they go a long time. But the batteries are all charged. I've never had that happen before. I have had it happen on other cases since then of cameras going out, different things. Yeah, but that was really noticeable at that time.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be interesting. Like I say, it's just interesting for me that obviously as a professional, you're no amateur when it comes to video. And getting your thoughts about what could have caused that kind of thing.
Right.
Am I right in also thinking that other than the technical issues that you had with your camera, The other thing that I wanted to mention before we go into the infamous hanging photos was that Jeff had also witnessed flashing lights and like a deep mass shadow within the attic. Is that right?
Yeah,
I think he mentioned it a couple of times. Like it was like I think he was saying it was like a slow flash of lights that he kind of captured on the camera.
I think that he had seen a flash of light. I don't remember seeing that, but he had seen a flash of light. But when we were up in the attic, again, my camera didn't work video wise. I have video of it, like a video of just as we were getting in there, but then it stopped almost immediately as soon as I got upright in the attic. The flash you were talking about, he did take some pictures, a few photographs. He put the lens back on his camera, and fortunately for Jeff, it worked fine. It was not damaged at all. He was worried about being damaged. He took some photos, and he did get when we looked, we were shooting film this, so we didn't see it till we developed it, but there was a little tiny rod or comet of light hovering just above the floor, just about maybe 6-7 feet away from him. And then the other thing that happened, I remember smelling a bad odor. It was smelling like rotting flesh or something. And I told Jeff, I said, I think we better get out of here. This is really bizarre. Almost smelled like a body or something up there, but there was no body up there. No.
Was that a common occurrence? Did you smell that regularly, or was it just an occasional thing? Because that gets mentioned, but it doesn't get mentioned in terms of how often you may have smelled that.
Right. There was a smell of iodine when we first got to the house that was very pronounced. It was back by the laundry room. And, later on I found out, iodine is kind of a product of sea kelp from the ocean. And, of course, that house had been lived in by many, many seamen over the years. It was built in 1903 or 1904 or something like that.
Right.
But Jeff, the other remarkable thing that happened, Josh, was that so I handed Larry Brooks and Barry Taft the camera gear, the deck, and the camera, and then I crawled out of there. And I'm down below the attic. And again, my camera's still not working at that moment. It did come back on a short time later. I was able to document some things. But I'm looking up through this crawl space, and Jeff is coming down. As he comes down, he's coming down very slowly, and his face kind of contorts into this expression of total fright. And I asked him, "Are you okay?" I said, "Are you all right?" And he didn't say anything. And he comes down through the crawl space opening. And as he comes down, when he gets down below, he's standing there. And I said, "Well, what was going on?" I said, "You couldn't answer me what was happening." He says, "I dare not say anything. I was frightened to death." He says, "I dare not look behind me." I said, "Why not?" And he says, "Because as I was about ready to exit the attic and I'm coming down, I felt a large pressure on my lower back, and it felt like a large bony hand pressing, adding more pressure as it went to his lower back." And later on, he did have to go to a chiropractor for that. He had some internal injuries to his back. So that was amazing.
So how because obviously you mentioned that Jeff was the skeptic, when you first went into this place.
Oh, yeah.
How long before he changed his mind?
That night. That night he changed his mind. And I do have to give him credit though, because he was he changed his mind. He became a convert overnight, just like that quick. And I think he's a very rational guy, and he thought you could always put some kind of rational explanation to it, involve it. And so I remember that when I got down there, I think we heard some scratching sounds. I think I may have recorded some scratching noises. And then we heard, or maybe just before the scratching noises, there were footsteps in the attic, sounded like a large man, walking around up there. And Barry Taft heard it, and the people he was with heard it. We all heard it. And I remember getting some of the scratching sounds by the time the camera just came back up. I started rolling, and you can see everybody looking up. And then Jeff, like I said, I want to give him credit because he wanted to find out what's going on. He stood on the washing machine, and they put a milk crate up there to get up there, and he was looking up there. And I was, at that time, I think I had a light on from below, a little camera, like a sun gun light. And I remember that he goes, "Oh my gosh," or something. and he goes, "There's something moving around up here." So I asked him what it was. He said he saw it like if you put three men in a dark under a black sheet. It was like them moving
Yeah.
back and forth. That was what he described it as. Now I didn't
Did,
see that. I definitely heard all the noises coming from up there, uh, but I didn't see that. But
how often did you kind of venture into the attic, or did you just hear what Jeff said and was like, okay, yeah, I'm better down in the kitchen,
yeah,
rather than going up in the attic?
yeah. I don't think after the Jeff and I had come down that first time, none of us in the house, the investigators, went back in the attic that night. I did go back later
Yeah.
on, even
Uh,
after this other incident we're going to talk about. Yeah, I did go
so
back,
that
but
one of the other things which I find really interesting is the fact that this strange substance, this strange liquid that seemed to appear, where at first Jackie would kind of clean it away, but then you tried to uh, identify exactly what this liquid was. And what I find really interesting is that, I mean, you got it tested in a laboratory, or whether that's Barry Taft that got it tested in a laboratory to find out exactly
yeah, yeah,
what this stuff was.
yeah.
And it also, what I find interesting, I've spoken to another guy called Keith Linder, who's at Washington State, who also had a strange liquid pouring from his walls as well. Like there's like this real crossover in poltergeist cases with this kind of thing. Do you want to say to people, or tell people one of when this was laboratory test, what it turned out to be? Because it's really odd.
Yeah, Jackie had told us about like some kind of fluorescent orange liquid dripping off of the glasses. Like if she'd already washed the glasses and they were dry, and as she was getting ready to put them up, she would notice a liquid kind of fluorescent orange. I didn't see that. I don't think she had any pictures of it because later on I gave her a camera, a still camera. But one night, I think it was August 28th, 89, and we had been there. I know Taft was with us the first several weeks of that case, and then his father had a heart attack, and then he couldn't go on the rest of the cases. But we were there. I believe he was there that night, but he had left, and there was just a few of us. Bob Moss was there, and Jackie, maybe Chrissy Zivkovic, and Susan with Castaneda, and Jeff was there. And this liquid ooze starts coming out of the wall cabinets. She had a little wall cabinet there. She put knickknacks on you right by where you go into the kitchen, threshold to the kitchen. And I got on camera. I rolled on it quickly. I think they were lighting it up with flashlights. I was just using that light, and you could see this liquid ooze. And they put it. I think Taft put it into a bag, so he must have been there. Yeah, Taft put it into a plastic bag. He took it. He had a guy. The guy didn't want to analyze it, but somebody I think he knew at UCLA, and it came back amazingly as human blood plasma with a heavy copper and iodine content involved. And that's interesting. You said iodine because that was what we smelled the first night before we went up in the attic. So,
and I'm kind of assuming you found there was absolutely no natural cause for this. There was no kind of weird pipes. There was nothing backing up. There was nothing in the sewage system or anything like that.
Nobody stuffing the walls or anything like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was just inexplicably there, and it just came out of nowhere. And I remember, I know that was one of those nights where there were nights where nothing at all happened, hardly anything. We'd have a group of, I think Barry Taft would invite more people over. I know Beth Shasky was there. She was a photographer with incredible features in different places, tabloids, and not a whole lot happened, but that night it happened as we were getting ready to leave. It was like 4 a.m. We were there late nights sometimes, and that started happening. I was fortunate to get that as it happened on camera. I remember something was like found in the hallway back by the children's bedroom. And there was a closet there, and out in the hallway there, right by the bathroom too, back to the rear bathroom. There was like a little bit of a liquid like on the floor as well. It looked like it's coming up through the floor or something, but the cabinet, you can really see that clear. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will just kind of point out to people who are kind of listening to this and may not have ever heard of this case before, because there's been a good 30 odd years since this. So I will give, obviously, I'll show everybody the documentary you need to find that Barry produced in 1989. which details it. Plus, obviously, he's written a book about it as well. But I will, and also I think it's in the UK. It is definitely on Amazon Prime for free. Go find it. I don't think it's on YouTube in the UK. It might be on YouTube through other means. I think lots of people have kind of cut up bits and pieces of the documentary in different forms and stuff. But I think it's on. Is it on? I'm assuming it's probably on some other US channels. Is it as well?
Yeah, I think it's on Tubi. I think YouTube TV carries it, and it's on Tubi and a couple other ones. I'm trying to think what they are right now. I can't think, but it was. I know Tubi carries it, and
Yeah.
if you get that,
Yeah. This is the documentary you need to find, guys. So an unknown encounter. If you type in San Pedro or Pedro, and certainly, like I say, Amazon Prime in the UK, you'll be able to find it. But it's well worth kind of checking out, because I think I will go into I think we'll have to now talk about the whole hanging incident in the attic, just because it's so bizarre and so weird. But also, I mean, so this happened on. So let's just gonna give an idea of the full scale of things. So it happened within a relatively short time. So Jackie moved into the home in like the winter, I think 88. You guys came in the August, and the incident around Jeff with this wasn't a rope. It's kind of like a plastic wire, almost like a fishing, like a washing line, like a washing line. Yeah, that happened on September the 4th, 1989. So do you want to kind of take us back to that particular night? Because I think it started with Jackie kind of ringing you, calling you, leaving you a voicemail, and she was kind of panic stricken, I think.
Yeah, and I told Jackie I was going to record her voice on my answering machine. I said I wanted to try to document, because she would call me up in the middle of the night, tell me about what was going on. I couldn't always get down there because it's a little bit of a drive. I lived in Studio City, like I said, and it's probably like 45 minutes from. You have to take the Harbor Freeway, go past LA, and it's quite a bit of a drive. That was a night that I'll never forget. I remember I had an upstairs apartment at that time in Studio City on Tahunga Avenue, and I have a friend who was living here out here at the time. I went to high school with him. He was a freshman when I was a senior at Stephen T. Baden High School in Hamilton, Ohio. And I didn't know he was living out here. My parents, my mother and my stepfather were visiting. They ran into him on the liner, on the jet liner they were on. And so we were connected. I found he had like some kind of medical software he was promoting, working with. And I told him about some of the things that were going on. So he knows a little bit about audio. I said, sometimes I need an audio person. I said, you want to help me out a little bit on that in some of the jobs I was doing? He said, sure. So he had heard about the case down in San Pedro. Jeff and I had talked to him about it. And we have all three of us been working at night. I think I was up. I had an editing bay, 3/4 inch editing bay at that time in my apartment. And they were over there for some reason. I think maybe something Jeff and I worked on. Gary happened to stop over, and we'd gotten some dinner, and we came back to the apartment, and that's when the call came in from Jackie. She called weird hours of the night, which was fine. I said, call me anytime, and if I don't hear it, the machine will pick up. But I had that recording on the video, and she says she was really panicked. I mean, she was desperate. She said all hell was breaking loose. She said that a Pepsi, the refrigerator door opened and a Pepsi can went flying out and hit her in the head or something. And she said the doors were opening and closing and slamming really hard. And I don't remember if she said anything about, I don't think the apparition appeared or anything that night, but she said it was really, really active. So I said, okay, Jeff and I were talking to her on the phone, speaker phone, and okay, we'll come down there and get you out of there or something, and see what's going on. She sounded desperate. So we got our gear together really quick, jumped in the van, and we hauled down there. And basically, she was on the front porch. In that picture you saw, that's the picture taken at that time. So that's the real house. It's a very small little bungalow style house. And
I'll just put this back on so people can kind of get an idea of the size of the place.
Yeah, that's the porch right there. And that's how it looked back then. And it still looks the same, except it's been remodeled a little bit. That little fence, picket fence is gone now, but the door's been replaced. But yeah, it's still there basically. And so that's where they were. and she was really excited and scared and all at the same time. And she had her kids, like I think her baby was in a little bassinet, covered up. It was kind of a cool night. It was late, like gosh, maybe like 1 a.m. or something. It's late.
Yeah.
And her little boy was all bundled up. I remember that. And so I went in. I had the camera. I pulled the camera. I put my the camera on her. That's the news guy in me, Film me. What happened? What happened? And she's telling me about all the things, this whole litany of things that was going on, poltergeist types of things, strange noises and being hit in the head with a can of Pepsi and all this stuff. And but when we got there, like I said, Jeff and Gary were with me, and we got in there. I got to tell you, it was very quiet. I thought maybe the ghost was dormant at that point, or maybe it had exhausted itself or something, But Susan came over, Castaneda, her neighbor, who lived a few blocks away. Like I said, she's passed on since then, but she came over, and so I guess the guys, Gary, wanted to see where Jeff's camera had got pulled out of his hands. I think that was the first night Gary had ever been to that house. Gary Baines.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a commercial pilot now in Ohio. He's back in Ohio now. But he was skeptical too. Not like Jeff, but he was pretty skeptical. And so Jeff and Gary decided they're going to go up and check it out. And so I remained down below talking to Susan and Jackie. And again, very quiet. I don't think any of us thought anything was going to happen that night, because there were nights when things didn't happen. And they went up. And I remember, here's the thing. Gary went up. Jeff didn't have his camera that night. I don't blame him, because, he thought maybe the camera would be damaged or grabbed again,
Yeah.
But I didn't, you know what I'm talking about? And I had a little point and shoot camera, not digital, but before digital. But I gave it to Gary. Gary was going up. I said, Gary, if anything does happen, I don't think anything will happen, but if anything does, get a picture of it. I said, I'm here to document it, right? I want evidence. So again, quiet. It was very quiet for about, they were up there talking for like 15 minutes or so. And where we were standing down below in this little darkened room in the laundry room, right below where the crawl space door was, that's the first catalyst. I mean, it was a catalyst for what was to come. There was a ball of light that was like, I remember it being like a reddish orange color, and it was shaped kind of lenticular shape, and it went across, very small, and it went across and just very fast, but all three of us saw it down below, and it went through the door. It looked like there was a door to my right there by the laundry room, and it went and it disappeared. And I didn't get a chance to get a camera shot of it. I was trying to preserve my batteries, because those cameras would eat batteries at that time. But no, it happened very quickly. But then I think I yelled up, "It's down here." And then the other two girls were saying, "Oh yeah, it's down here. We heard some noises." And I think right after, actually the noises came right after we saw the light. And there was this snapping sound. It was clear as a bell. It just sounded as if someone were snapping their fingers 3 times. It went click, click, click. And then as soon as it did that, something told me, get these guys down here. And I just started rolling the camera, thinking you could feel it, something there, because I felt like I was being watched to my left. And it was just an open bathroom door there. I felt like I was being watched. And so I said, come down, there's something down here, or something like that. And next thing I know, I started the camera up. As soon as I started the camera up, see, Gary had moved away from Jeff towards the crawl space. And as soon as that, I yelled up there, and I started the camera, we hear a groan, this really scary groan. And Gary turns and says, "Are you okay?" or something like that. "Are you all right?" And Jeff doesn't respond. And thank God he was able to take pictures. We didn't know down below. We didn't know what happened. So that's the first photograph.
So essentially, he really couldn't see in the attic. So by taking the photograph, with a flash, it was just so he could kind of see, where Jeff was. So
that's right.
And what he obviously got back on the film, because this is kind of is pretty quickly after he's heard this, and he doesn't know why Jeff's not responding. This is one of the photographs that he was taking. So was he fully aware, I suppose, that what was going on? I assume he wasn't. He had no idea what he'd just witnessed, particularly.
Yeah, Josh, at that point in that photograph that you see here, that's the first shot that he got. It's a wide shot. Again, see, he's back by the where you go down, where the crawl space door is. And he got over a little bit closer and got one other shot. And by that time, I had my light. I had a sun gun on the camera. It was like a 250-watt light. You had to wear one of these big battery belts, you know. And there was a spill light that came up. Again, myself and the two ladies, we did not know what had happened. And I could hear some mumbling up there. And I don't know, I forget what they said, but what happened was that Jeff had found himself with a clothesline cord, old plastic clothesline cord, very weathered looking, and it had hit him in the neck, and he blacked out, and he wound up in a different spot than where he had been, and he was in the cord, which is kind of hard to see, but it's there. If you look closely, it was wrapped around a nail protruding from one of the cross members of the attic, and it was tied in a very specific knot that I found out later on was a bowline knot, which is the seaman's knot. And
what I just want to do, I've got like a quick clip. Basically, it's around about 50 seconds to a minute, roughly.
Yeah.
I just want to show everybody that, just because, and I'm going to share my screen so we can kind of see this. Because for anybody who's kind of, some people, skeptical of the photographs, they'll be like, well, it looks staged. It looks a bit hokey. It looks like he's just kind of moved his neck into that position and that kind of thing.
Right.
But what I find more compelling, and I said this to a couple of people I know, what I find more compelling is Jeff's reaction immediately after, as he's coming out of the attic crawl space, because to all intents and purposes, he really does not look like he knows what has happened, what is going on. He looks dazed, he looks confused. He's almost like as if you've kind of fainted and you're like, where the hell am I? And I think that's really compelling for me.
I kept the camera rolling, and I didn't know what had happened even when he's coming down, but you'll see that actual footage there. It's really terrifying.
So I'm keeping fingers crossed that we can share this and everybody can see this at home.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put this. So I'm going to put this on the bigger screen. Hopefully you can hear it. It might be a little bit faint for people, but hopefully you can see it.
I was hung in an attic, and he helps me off of this nail.
He had a horrible time getting Jeff down from there, and those were very anxious moments that passed because we didn't know whether to go up there or what. We knew something happened.
Right now, Jeff, what happened? Put something around my neck. Look at his shit.
Oh my God.
He was scared.
Jeff, please get down. I gotta get out of here.
Whoa.
It's definitely raising me up. Jeff, please come here. Get this for me. Get the mic. Jeff, here you go, buddy. Here you go. What happened? Are you okay, buddy?
Oh my God.
Look at his neck. Jeff,
come on.
What's behind your neck?
I don't know what's on my neck.
Look at this. A piece of rope.
Oh, shit.
Gary, get down out of there, buddy. Can you find my glasses? Gary, Jeff,
Look at this.
Jeff, turn the camera.
Jeff, are you okay?
Jeff,
I'm fine.
Jeff, tell me what happened, buddy.
Well, I don't know, Gary. I told Gary that there was nothing happening up there, and he turned around and came. He was coming this way. All of a sudden, I feel this thing around my neck, and it's got me hanging, and it's pulling on my leg.
You were hanging?
Yeah, I was hanging. Gary had to bring me down.
What has happened, actually? I'm pulled to the side of the attic, and there's nobody up there, and I know that Gary's standing there, and he has nothing to do with it. He's at a distance from me. I see the flash from his camera. I remember that. And I know he said something to me, but I don't recall exactly.
So, I mean, like I said, I think the most compelling part of that is that his expression as he's coming down out of the attic, he looks dazed, he looks confused, he doesn't look like what the hell has gone on. He didn't even realize what it particularly was around his neck. All of that, I think, is really, really interesting. What's your view looking back on that footage?
Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I remember being scared to death. It was so scary. I mean, once I realized that something had attacked him, it was one of the most terrifying moments of the whole case. And I'll tell you, it's like I always tell people, it's like a story that no scriptwriter could duplicate, because this one was for real. There was no
Yeah.
doubt. There was no doubt it was for real. Again,
And
Jeff being a total skeptic that he was,
and just obviously, I mean, after this incident, I mean, how did it affect Jeff? Because I'm sure it must have affected him.
Yeah, Josh, it did affect him. And I got to tell you, who could blame him? He never set foot back in that house. Even to this day, he never went back in that house. However, 5 months down the road, see, she had moved. She actually had like a temporary reconciliation with her ex-husband. And they used to go camping up in the mountains in a place called Weldon. It's a couple 100 miles north of here near Bakersfield. And it's kind of a neat little rural community up there. And he moved her up there to a mobile home. And again, they had another falling out, and he left her there. And then 5 months down the road, she's calling me saying that the ghost is back. The ghost has returned. I thought, what? The ghost is back? What? Her friends were calling me. Her neighbors were calling me, saying that they had witnessed the old man. Neighbors, Philip, by the way, was Jim and Janice Silcott. They lived behind them in another home, another trailer home, mobile home. And they were moving a widescreen TV set into a storage shed behind this mobile home. And it was in the middle of daytime, and they could see this image suddenly appear of this desiccated old man, corpse-like old man. And it stared at him. And Jim, I interviewed Jim, he's since passed away, but he said it had Charlie Manson-looking eyes, very evil-looking eyes, from the famous Life magazine photograph, of Charlie Manson. And so I told Jeff, I said, Jeff, look, it's been 5 months. This was in April of 1990 now. We've gone into the next year. I said, look, I don't know what to think about the fact that, or the idea that Jackie's describing, that she's been followed by this entity. I said, unless it's some kind of an attachment that we don't know about yet or something. And I said, what I am interested in, her neighbors are saying that they're seeing phenomena. So I did ask Jeff if he wanted to go up there with me, and we went up there. Believe it or not, we didn't plan this. It was we got up there on Friday the 13th, on April 13th, 1990, and it went into the wee hours of the morning because we got up there late with a long drive. And then we got up there, and the first thing that happened was, again, Jeff never went back to the San Pedro house, but now he's up there with me in Weldon. And we were interviewing Jim Silcott, and we interviewed, we did an interview with him outside with his wife, but this was one inside. And we interviewed a couple of the other younger people and some of his kids outside too, I think. And Jeff had set up a camcorder on the shed because he noticed a dark shadow. There was a bulb lit up in there like a light, and he saw this shadow move across it. They went dark and then came back on. The light came back on. So he wanted to set up a camera there. And then as we were doing the interview, he said he was looking out the window. You could see the camera from the light illuminated from the inside back to the camera. He said his camera just moved on the tripod.
So I mean, obviously it seems that obviously this, whatever you'd say was in this, in Jackie's home, is obviously moved along with her.
Yes.
How long is it still ongoing? Did it kind of peter out over time? What's the situation now?
Yeah, it's interesting, Josh. It did peter out over time. It went, she moved back to Weldon. I'm sorry, she moved from Weldon back to San Pedro. She moved into an apartment at 640 West 7th Street, which is just a few blocks away from 11th Street where this all happened. And more phenomena happened. And I gave her a camera, and she got pictures of glowing lights over the carpet in her baby's bedroom. But I think that the no doubter experience for myself, a lady named Tina Lawler, she was a young girl, she was 16 at that time, was the fact that Jackie up in Weldon, this, like, again, we got there late. She wanted to do the Ouija board because she said she'd been doing a Ouija board. Someone had given her a Ouija board, and she said it was communicating with her through the Ouija board. I can't remember exactly what it said, but there was, she said that the planchette would move on its own volition. And so I said to Jeff, I said, well, why don't we try it? I told Jackie, I said, I don't want anybody else to touch the table. And Tina Lawler was there, a babysitter that worked with her. She lived next door. And
I'm
it
just
was
sorry
a,
to interrupt. I'm just showing people the Jackie, one of Jackie's photos of these kind of self-illuminating orbs. You can kind of see I think that's the bedroom carpet, I believe. So it was
yeah,
enough to light up the carpet, to give you an idea. So we're not talking just some kind of, speck of dust caught, that's been kind of captured. This seems to be luminous, whatever it is, whatever she's kind of captured there, and it's enough to light up the carpet anyway. So really interesting stuff.
that's right. That's when she moved back to San Pedro, and she moved into that Weldon apartment. I'm sorry, the San Pedro apartment, 640 West 7th Street. There was also a day there when she was there, and there was a psychic there named Noni Fagat. I think she's passed on too since then. It's been a number of years. She said she didn't feel anything at the time, and my mother was visiting here with my stepfather, and they were talking to her at this apartment, and Jackie told me, she said, I think it's here. She whispered, I think it's here. And so I started rolling video, and I didn't see anything, or I didn't feel anything. But when I look back on the videotapes, when we got back to my little apartment there at that time, Studio City, you could see lights actually entering her head. It looked like little beads of light moving into her head. And but in Weldon, that night in 1990, there was it was communicated. The Ouija board communicated unbelievably. Told us things like phantoms fill the skies around you. When I asked it, do ghosts reside among the living, or how many ghosts reside among the living, it said phantoms fill the skies around you. And then the table would shake violently. It got very cold in that room. It was moving. It was skating. Unbelievable. It was like, it was just pulling us right to each word, different things that it would communicate. And at one point, it said something about full of hatred or something, anger or something. And I said, is there anyone, I should have asked it. I said, is there anyone here that you hate? And it spells out Jeff. And right in front of me, Jackie, Tina Lawler, it levitates him into the air in an instant. And he goes flying up to where the wall meets the ceiling. It just smashes him into
see, this is what I mean about this case. There's just so much to it. I mean, people in the chat I think there's a couple of people going, I just need time to kind of process this, because there is so much going on in this case. I mean, the one thing I will just say, even though I can't see the chat on my screen, I am following the chat on my mobile, right? So if people do have questions for you, put it on the chat on my mobile. I'll read it, and I'm just gonna have to do it old school. I'm just gonna if you've got questions for Barry, let me know, and then I'll pass them over to him. There is so much to this story, because if you kind of listed all of the things that kind of it is kind of insane. I mean, like I say, the fact that we're still talking about it 38 or so years later, and it's still out there, and people are still debating it. Does that surprise you, or does it, just having witnessed it stuff yourself, does it not surprise you at all because it was so insane?
Well, it surprised me. It surprised me that people still remember the case because it was so long ago. But I knew at the time when I was documenting it, I thought it was an important case that needed to be documented. But did I think people would, get this following or whatever it has now? I know. I think the important thing, again, was getting that fish that didn't get away story.
Yeah.
I mean? Getting it on camera. That's the thing that was my whole force behind wanting to document that. But no, it is amazing. It's amazing. And the house is still haunted today. It's still haunted today.
Is there anything, looking back, that you think you should have done differently at the time? Or, like in hindsight, do you think, do you know what? I should have just done this, or I should have done that. Or are you thinking, well, I'll cut myself some slack. It was the 80s and I had this huge camera. And thus, in terms of getting, the equipment in the right positions and stuff. But is there anything you look back on and think, I should, or wish I'd done that, or wish I'd captured this?
Yeah, well, I definitely wish we had captured a levitation. Everybody says, well, why didn't you get that on camera? Why didn't you videotape the Ouija board? Well, I had a camera there on a tripod, and we tried. And it's just before we started the Ouija board session again. The camera was neutralized. I had plenty of batteries. I even plugged it into the wall. Even the pilot light didn't even come on, and it wouldn't work. So we went ahead anyway. And I realized, I think if I had to do it again, I would definitely, I know when it came to my apartment, it came to my apartment and followed me as well later on in the summer of 1990. I would try to get more cameras. We just didn't have the money then to get more cameras and stuff back then. But I think the trick is to get more cameras. But I did the best I could at that time and just try to do it as a news guy would do it. But yeah, I suppose there's always something else you want to do on hindsight, But
great. So got a couple of questions for you here. One's from Roger. He's saying it would take a lot of strength to have tied and held Jeff like that. Where would a ghost have drawn that from?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And the other thing, I don't know where it would have got the strength, but the another thing that Gary had pointed out is just how fast that happened. It was 1 second he was standing in one place, another second it was bang, that fast, and it got that knot tied around his neck and had him almost like it had some kind of it was going against gravity or some kind of space-time issue that it didn't follow those kind of rules. It was almost like a quantum physics thing. I don't know. But it was very amazing.
Yeah, there's one here from the Sober Carper saying, question for Barry, did the phenomenon follow him or any of his crew home, or was it just Jackie?
It followed me, and it did. Jeff told me it followed him once. He woke up in bed with his camera on his chest one night. And, the next morning he woke up with the camera on his chest. And my apartment, though, was where most of the activity happened. That was on Tujunga Avenue in Studio City, California, right on the border of North Hollywood. And summer of 1990, we noticed, my bedroom window would be shattered. I heard the noise. It shattered my bedroom window. And we had a triangular shard of glass. And I think Jeff and I had a job the next morning early, and I told him that my window shattered for no reason. I think my bed had shaken also that night. And so when we got back from the job, we're sweeping up the glass, it was all over the floor. And then we put it into a garbage container, plastic bag. And back at that time, we had a dumpster in the back of the apartment buildings. And so we put it in the dumpster, closed the lid. We walked back into my apartment, and that particular shard of glass that we had just wrapped up was sitting on the top row of keys of an electric typewriter I had at that time.
That's nuts. That really is crazy, isn't it?
It's called a port, like where it moves an object. It did that, and I went out and checked the bag, and the bag was not, unraveled. It wasn't broken, split open, and it, but just that triangular shard of glass, and it would turn on the gas burners. The right front gas burner would continually go on and off, or not off, but on. We'd have to turn it off, and it put bullets on I had a rifle, a 22 rifle at that time. People had been broken into in our apartment complex. Never used it, but had a box of bullets and it put them on that. It smashed them onto one of the burners and then lit the burner.
Yeah,
but we got
you don't want to lit gas stove and bullets mix.
No. It was a very dangerous poltergeist.
Yeah, that's not a good combination whatsoever. Question from Blue Sky Lisa. She's saying, question, wasn't the knot on the cord around Jeff's neck a rarely used knot except for semen? So it's like a is that correct?
Yeah.
Is it like a maritime kind of knot?
It was a maritime knot, and I didn't know anything about knots, when this happened. And I remember I went and found a guy. He's in the documentary. His name is Luke Coolgis, and I'm sure he's passed away since then. He was fairly up in years at that time. And he had been a seaman all his life. And he said, whoever made that knot knew something about the sea or the ocean. He said, that's a longshoreman's knot. They used it on ships for hundreds of years. He said, it's a non-slip knot or something. And so, yeah, that's true. And it's interesting that was a seaman's knot, because where were we at in San Pedro? That was a house that had been lived in by countless seamen in about, the 89 years that it had been in existence. So really amazing. Absolutely did have that semen angle to it.
A couple of people obviously asking about the whole issue with Jeff. Just say one's Gareth saying, could Jeff's weight have snapped the cord around his neck? And did you have anyone independently view your evidence? And I got Simon saying, I'm not familiar with the story, but couldn't there just have been a wire hanging from the nail he walks into and caught himself on, like catching a belt loop on a door handle? So,
Yeah.
Go on, do you want to go on?
Well, yeah, good point. I mean, good point. I've read other people say, oh, maybe he walked into that knot and just got entangled. No, it couldn't have happened. We had been the first night that we were up in that attic, when we had all hell breaking loose, with the camera being pulled out of his hands. Jeff and I thoroughly went over that entire attic, and there was no cord laying on the ground or otherwise on that nail or anything. The nail could have been there, probably was there, but there was nothing else. There were very, very few things up there. Very, very vacated attic, wasn't much up. Just that little what do you call it, crate was in that attic.
Yeah, so the first image, there's hardly anything up there. I've got to say, yeah. UK Paranormal Search is saying, after so many years, can you rationalize anything that happened in the cold light of day?
No. As far as rationalizing, no, I can't. But I will say one thing about the case, that we find even with my girlfriend's case, who's got a poltergeist case, there's a common denominator to most of the hauntings, and that is balls of light. When Jeff came down out of the attic, if they look at the original documentary, Unknown Encounter, look at what you see behind the doorway in the kitchen. He's splashing himself with water, trying to cool down from this experience after being hanged. A light goes through the doorway, and a little later on, there's even a better one, is one that just skims the top of his head. It's like a rod or a ball of light. And a physicist named Dr. James Robin looked at that, because I was using a very powerful light on the camera when I was filming that, because this is after the hanging. Jeff is talking to Gary about the thing, and he's still holding the rope. They're examining the rope, like, what the hell happened, and there was no shadow. That object went across, and there was no shadow on the back wall. Theoretically, there should have been some kind of shadow with that light, blazing there, but it wasn't. So no, it's a very, very strange case. But the ball of light phenomenon, or rods of light, this seems to be the common denominator we pick up over and over again. And that tells me that it's some kind of unknown form of energy. That's what I think.
Yeah. The Occult Life is saying, is there documentation on the testing of the liquid being blood plasma?
That's something we wish we had, and we don't, because the gentleman that, I still don't know who the gentleman was, but Dr. Taft took it to someone associated or was at UCLA, but he didn't want to be tied to paranormal phenomena, so he didn't want to be identified. But that's the only thing I do wish I had that. I do wish I had. I don't, but we let Dr. Taft take care of that element of the case.
Yeah. Gareth is saying, with things being moving and flying around, could Jackie have been displaying some form of psychokinesis? So do you think it was down because I get the, obviously she was in a high stress, period, and inadvertently causing this, or do you think it was linked to the property?
That's a good question, because I do believe it's possible that some people that are undergoing stress can have some kind of psychokinetic ability, or psychokinetic phenomena attaches to them, and objects move in their presence. I believe that's definitely possible. I think we're at the tip of a very large iceberg. I guess back then we always entertained that as a possibility, that maybe it was Jackie's own energy that was attracting the ghost or spirit. But now, after all these many years later, I don't think so. There was something that was attracted to her, but it was attached to the property, because to this day, just last year, I didn't really know. I know the owner. He still rents the house out, believe it or not. He's rented this house out with his family. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anything happen in the property? Because I think somebody mentioned, is there anything going on in the property right now?
Yeah, we didn't know that till last June. My girlfriend and I went down there with a gentleman. Actually, this gentleman named Eric Ramos, real nice guy. He wanted to see where it happened. I said, well, I haven't been down there for a while. I know the owner. So we went down there and met with him, and I had a DVD he wanted me to sign. I did that for him, and then we went over to the property, and the owner came out. We were talking to him. He said, oh, no, they haven't reported anything really. I think he just wants to keep the property rented. But this family came through, a husband and wife and 2 children. They were young teenagers, and they were coming through, and they were going back towards this gate. There's a gate there now that you have to go through to get to where that house is. There's 2 twin bungalows. It's the one on the right, 593 West 11th Street. And I said, do you guys live back there? And they go, yes. I said, 593? And he goes, yes. I said to Jesse, do you mind if I talk to them for a few minutes? We went back and talked to them. We have some video we shot. I know Melody took some shots with her phone, I think. And it's still being haunted. They won't go in the attic. They've heard the stories. They've had EVPs, I know, recorded. And just the night before, the husband told us that he had a terrible dream, frightening dream of a disembodied head. And it frightened him. They hear footsteps all the time running across the attic. But nothing, there have been objects that move, but nothing physical, like attack or anything. No, they won't go in the attic at all. They know that story. But
and after all of this incident, obviously you were doing kind of TV shows linked to, the paranormal and things. After this, did it put you off, or did you spend the rest of your career kind of doing paranormal stuff because of this? What happened next for you?
Oh, for me, that's a good question. Actually, it spurred me on. Jeff won't go near me so much. If I'm going to go to a haunting, no, he won't touch the subject anymore. I'm sure he would talk. He would do an interview like what we're doing right now. But and so would Gary Bain. Gary, who pulled him down from that rafter, saved him. It spurred me on because I thought, well, maybe I was meant to do this. Maybe. So I kind of made it kind of a life goal. I wanted to try to see what else I could get. But again, it's kind of a crapshoot because you either get it or you don't, and very seldom do you really get evidence on camera. You can if you really concentrate on this subject, and if you recognize what a good story is, and you recognize credibility in people. I'm pretty good, because being in news, I was so used to dealing with people, the public, that I could usually tell if they weren't telling the truth or not. But I really want to bring out the truth in this. That's what I want to do. Oh,
and one last thing I was just going to say, because in your line of work, you meet a lot of, incredible people, whether that's actors, directors, but what do they, do they know about this kind of past that you've had, or did you mention it, or is it like, is it get raised in conversation? Because if anybody doesn't, Barry, I would just say, Barry, your Facebook is just like a who's who of celebrities. The people you have met are just incredible. Look, I'll just show you this one. This is the one of the photographs that Barry sent me earlier, right? As it comes on. Just because I love this. Right,
Steven Spielberg. Yes.
Yeah. Who's that guy in the middle?
Yeah.
Some up and coming director. Good luck to him.
That was a number of years ago, back when Bill Gates was retiring. Microsoft and all that, and we had Steven Spielberg in a video. I was shooting a video for a company called Trifilm. They're based out of Seattle, Washington. And we got to go over and spend a little time with at Amblin Entertainment. He's based out of Universal Studios. He was very nice to us. I didn't really, the thing is, when you're doing a shoot like that with high profile, I rarely mention, because you usually don't have time to get into the paranormal stuff. You're usually there to do a job. I was there to film him for his Bill Gates retirement video, which they showed at his deal in Vegas, his retirement dinner. It worked out very well. But but I've had one actor friend of mine who was in MASH, Jeff Maxwell. He actually went down there one night. Nothing happened the night he was there. There were a number of nights when absolutely nothing happened. So then he became a skeptic. I guess he's still a little bit skeptical, which I don't blame him. Yeah. But it doesn't happen, when you
I
expect
was going
it
to say,
to.
does it get, like people just, do they kind of go, you're that Barry guy that, because I know some people are into the paranormal. They might they may have recognized you or known that you were what you're famous for from this.
There is one person I will tell you. I don't know if you recognize her. Her name is Kayla Marie Cromer. She's a real sweet lady. She's an actress. She stars on a series called Everything's Gonna Be Okay, and she's I was we were doing a paranormal convention in Ventura a couple of years ago, and she came up to me and she asked me if I was Barry Conrad. I said yes, and we had a little table there. We had some of our DVDs and stuff. And she goes, "You did the San Pedro case?" I said yes, and then she had this binder or something, and she said, "I've been following your work with the San Pedro story since I was 9." And she went down, canvassed the neighborhood, and was asking neighbors. And she goes, "It really did happen." I said, "Yeah, you can't even make up a story like. Are you kidding? You can't even make up a story like that." So she was just really fascinated with it, and so she will call me or email me sometimes. What's going on? Can we get back into the house? And I said, well, yeah, I did meet the neighbors that live there now. I'd love to do an update if they'll let me. I haven't gone back to them. I do have the contact information now, and find out a little more specifics about what's going on in the house since they've lived there. But the house is still haunted. But yeah, Kayla Marie Cromer, great lady. She's an actress, and if you see a series called Everything's Gonna Be Okay, she's in that. She stars in that series.
Right. I'm just because I realize I've kind of kept you over an hour. So just before we finish, again, I'm just going to show this. So if you look, and if you're interested in this case, I mean, there's some really funky 1980s kind of stuff going on in the documentary as well, which is well worth checking out, because I love. First of all, you've mentioned that I love the narration. The guy you got, the British guy you got into the narration is just awesome. Plus I loved the kind of was it like the Tom Savini kind of monster mask thing that was going on in this doc, which I loved as well. it's really of its time, but I loved it.
So thank you. It's a little dated now. I mean, I've done about 11 films since then. And it was my first documentary I ever tried to do, but I wanted to make sure I got the story out. Yeah, it was of its time. It's a little dated now, but Ferdy Mayne was the host of that show, and you may know him in England and Britain. He was the star of the Fearless Vampire Killers, and he was even in a scene in Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, and did a lot of other films. He was a good friend of Roman Polanski. And I met him through another friend named Brian Moore, who had worked on a movie with him. Brian does effects stuff, I guess. And he said, "Hey, I got a great guy." I said, "I'm looking for a host." And he says, "He got a great voice." And so the minute I met him, I said, "You're the guy."
Oh, he was amazing. I'd never really come across that guy before. He's just like, "Oh, I love this fella." So, so I would absolutely recommend the narration guy. Amazing. So check out Unknown Encounter. It's like I say, I know in the UK it's on Amazon Prime. It's probably on Amazon Prime in the US as well. Well worth looking up. It's like I say, and also Barry produced a book of the same name of this, detailing everything that happened in this haunting. So that's well worth checking out as well. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of plug or mention, or for anybody interested in this case that you recommend, Barry?
There's another show I did that has a shorter version of the San Pedro haunting, and it's got a couple other stories. I did a story about the real life entity case. Since I knew Dr. Taff, I got him to be interviewed. I also knew Frank DeFelita, who was the author of the book, The Entity. And that's a good one, too. It's got some good stuff in there. So that was a good one. Other than that, I've got a lot of other stories on UFOs as well. I did the Travis Walton story in their own words. That's all this is stuff. There's a lot of older stuff I've done.
Travis Walton's on my list. I want to get hold of Travis Walton.
Super nice guy.
Yeah. Put me in contact with Travis Walton. I want to get hold of him.
Great guy. Just all I can say is that, like I said earlier, it was a story that no scriptwriter can duplicate, and this one was for real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating. I'm doing it a disservice by trying to squeeze it into an hour, roughly, just over an hour. And it's like some people are realizing just on watching this, there is so much to this. Whatever you think, whether you're skeptical, whether you're a believer, there, I mean, if you like, so there's a tick box. Apparition, check. Noises, check. Orbs, yep, got that. Kind of scary dude who looks like death, yep, got that. You know, attacks, you know, things being levitated, things being smashed. Honestly, this is a hell of a case, and I think it's still, even 30 odd years on, still needs kind of more attention, because I think it's a fascinating case. So thank you so much, Barry, for coming on and talking about it.
Oh, thank you, Josh. It's been my pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. Phew, I think we're done. Thank you so much, Barry. It's like I said, absolute pleasure. Please do check out the documentary and the book. It's well worth looking into. And yeah, it's just been such a privilege to be able to talk to you, Barry, properly about this, and to get, you know, a first person kind of eyewitness account of all the craziness that went on. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I was there. It's a real deal.
Thanks, Barry.
You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, right. I think we're done. Apologies that I couldn't follow the chat, everybody. Just because I've, like I say, I have no idea why it's not been coming on my screen. So apologies that I've done that. Kaza, thank you so much. Again, you are, you know, such a generous person. Thank you so much for kind of supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed Barry's, you know, chat and conversation. And you know, if nothing else, look into this more. If you've never heard of this case, look into it, because it is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, and thank you to all the comments. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read many of them. Anyway, this Thursday I'll be back doing a Chips Tea party, so I'll have a little chat to you guys. This is for everybody now. I did a members only little chat last Thursday. And so no guests on Thursday, just you and me, people at home, and hopefully I can watch, I can see comments, because otherwise we would probably be screwed. So yeah, thank you so much for everybody watching, and then join me on Thursday. All right, guys, good night.